Wargreymon X. This will be the tribal Greymon profile for this set, and unless something big happens between now and October, this will probably be the only profile I do for it. For today's Meta Monday episode, I go over the explosive security killer, Wargreymon X. With BT9, this deck introduces a lot more tools that can help Wargreymon take out multiple security. But I'm going to be honest, I definitely prefer the Gaiomon Greymon X build over this variant at this point. But let's dive into the build itself and go over the card by card, the strengths, the weaknesses, and the combos. Keep in mind that deck profiles featured on this channel have been playtested and are tailored more to my style. Adjust as needed to yours, whether you're more aggro or control. And if you enjoy these types of Meta Monday episodes, do consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting that notification bell for more future content. This deck runs 5 level 2s, 13 level 3s, 11 level 4s, 8 level 5s, 7 level 6s, 3 level 7s, 3 option cards, and 5 Tamers. For level 2s, this deck runs 4 BT5 Koromon and 1 BT9 Koromon. BT5 Koromon brings a lot of value to this deck, in that you want to dig deeper for a card when you attack with a Greymon. While you may be chilling in the rays, sometimes drawing can get you that one card deeper into Omnimon, for example. As for BT9 Koromon, having some extra DP buffs isn't terrible. Gurumon is a possible substitute for the 5th egg slot, but there is some risk involved when it comes to promoting even a Greymon X and swinging a draw. There are times that you may actually deck out when it comes to constantly digivolving and drawing. Alternatively, your ratios may allow for even running strictly DP buffs to clear the security more easily. Regardless, I definitely feel safe going into security with my stack, especially if I have Metal Greymon Alteros or the Greymon X with the same level sources as well. For level 3s, this deck runs 13 in the form of, well, Agumons. Agumons galore, to be honest. 3 BT5 Searchers for Omnimon and or Greymon Digimon, 3 Agumon X for additional Greymon or Omnimon Search, and the White X Antibody option card. 4 promo Agumons that give plus 2000 DP generically to a Greymon, and 3 from the Gallantmon starter deck that give a plus 2000 DP if you're attacking a player. You might be wondering why 3 for the Searcher Agumons. I found in a lot of games I drew multiple Agumon X antibodies and it felt terrible not being able to digivolve on top of an X from an X. After adjusting, I am able to hit the Agumon to Agumon X more frequently. But in the majority of builds, you'll find Cool Boy also runs at a higher ratio as well, which can justify it. No other substitutes other than the potential Black Agumon if you decide to splash a secondary color. But this would also heavily change up your level 4 lineup and max out Agumon X for that potential digivolve back to red. For level 4s, this deck runs purely Greymon. With Greymon X, this Digimon can only digivolve from Digimon with Greymon in their name or a rookie for 2. Meaning this eliminates previous builds that utilize Geo Greymon and Chimeramon for the DNA shenanigans. Instead, you want to utilize DP buffs from the BT5 Greymon because this can also be a cheap digivolution for climbing up from your on-play Agumons to net you another draw. Greymon makes it so that your Digimon cannot be bounced or deleted by card effects, but do keep in mind that DP reduction and D-Digivolve effects are still effective that make Greymon vulnerable. The raise is your safe zone. And lastly, 3 starter deck Greymon for extra security checks. My suggestion for this Greymon is to either make this the 4 of if your Tamer lineup is 2 Taikamiyas instead of 3. Other Greymon suggestions come in the form of BT8 Greymon, which gives inheritable blocker. But keep in mind there are many decks that can target blockers these days, especially the mirror match where your opponent can blitz Wargreymon on you, or even the BT5 Wargreymon if they're feeling it. One other consideration for this deck was also running a 1-of a Gunimon as a secondary finisher. But I like the searchability the way it is, and would like to maintain the consistency. For level 5s, this deck runs 8 purely with 4 Metal Greymon X and 4 promo Metal Greymon Alteros mode. Alteros modes allows you to digivolve from even itself because it is treated as a Metal Greymon. In addition, it can pop Digimon of 5000 DP or less if you have a Tamer on board, which is huge considering most red effects were previously 4000 DP. Metal Greymon X, when digivolved into, gets plus 3000 DP if you have the Metal Greymon or X antibody underneath it, and it gets plus 1 security check, which carries over to the next Digimon if you digivolved off of it to keep it your turn. There are a lot of creative ways to eliminate as much security as possible with this Digimon, which I'll discuss in the combos. For level 6s, this deck runs 2 BT1 Wargreymon, 4 Wargreymon X, and 1 EX1 Wargreymon. The commonality in most builds is at minimum 1 BT1 Wargreymon or 1 EX1 Wargreymon. Wargreymon X is typically run at 4 of as a Digivolution target with X Antibody. BT1 Wargreymon is standard for option card negation, and while yes, your Digivolution sources prevent destruction by card effects and bounce, there's still DP depletion and de-digivolving. Wargreymon X has an amazing ability that when you attack into security, you gain 1 memory for each security that is removed off of your opponent's security stack. And this isn't a hard once per turn. Meaning in a hypothetical situation where you have starter deck 1 Greymon, 2 ties, and you digivolved off of a Metal Greymon X that turn, that's 5 potential checks for a memory return of 5. Depending on your meta, you might run 2 of these instead of the BT1 Wargreymon. Blockers can be a hindrance to this deck's OTK strategy. For level 7s, my initial version of the deck ran 2 Omnimon X Antibody. However, X Antibody is also easily de-digivolved, and instead of going for mid or late games, I think going the aggressive approach is better. Because of this, I utilize 2 Blitz Omnimons instead as a game finisher, while Omnimon X Antibody is a possible search off for the Agumons, Agumon X, or even Cool Boy. For option cards, this deck runs 3 in the form of 1 A Delicate Plan and 2 X Antibody. With Bandai removing sideboards, I honestly would be running 3 X Antibody. Unfortunately, playtesting against my Gaiamon deck with the wife, de-digivolved happens so often that this card would make or break my security swing sometimes. X Antibody, of course, helps with climbing to your X Antibody Digimon and is searchable off 5 of your cards, Agumon X and Cool Boy. Alternative options for this category could be Gaia Force or even Gaia Force Zero if you'd like to have some counterplay to other OTK decks. But keep in mind, in the mirror, Gaia Force does potentially nothing. Finally, Tamers in the form of 3 Tai Kamiya and 2 Cool Boys. I went with 3 Tai Kamiyas for the memory fixing and of course the extra security swings. Even in games where I thought I was about to lose because I needed to knock out 2 security, revealing a well-timed Tai Kamiya can do the trick for your Wargreymon X, especially if you have ADP as well. Cool Boy is a good 2-cost tamer that can memory choke and search for X Antibody and a Digimon with X Antibody and its traits. When you digivolve your Digimon into a Digimon of the same level with X Antibody and its traits, you can suspend this tamer to gain 1 memory and draw 1 additional card. Tamer substitutions you could use would be Hiro Amanakawa for the DP buffs instead if you're banking on starter deck 1 Greymon and you would like to utilize DP buffs as your tamer support. Personally, I feel a 2 Hero 1 Tai would be more mid to late game, while my variant currently goes for OTK Aggression. For strengths and weaknesses, this deck has the number 1 strength of being able to rip through security like it's nothing. Utilizing the Blitz Omnimon further supplements game enders, but while these are the strengths, the weaknesses is its own bag of worms. Weakness-wise, this deck is typical of red and has little to no draw power. Luckily with mulligans, if your opening hand is a brick, ship it for a different one. But in some playtesting hands, it feels terrible shipping 2 level 5s to the bottom, or even 2 level 6s, knowing that you won't be able to see them for a while. Defense-wise, this deck lacks much of the option cards for the counterplay against Metal Garurumon X. And most of all, be careful when you play certain tamers, as Black Wargreymon decks can wipe out your 4-cost tamers, and the Cool Boy simultaneously when digivolving. As for combos, this deck is also going to play typically in the Raise area. Raising preferably into an Agumon that's either a promo or the starter deck, honestly, it doesn't matter. Digivolving into the Agumon X can yield you an extra draw, but for going into a Greymon for 2 to pass memory. Greymon X turns on your protection from deletion and bounce effects before going into Metal Greymon Alteros mode for secondary protection if you need it. Even if your opponent starts attacking, worry about you, not them. Tai Kamiya and Cool Boy can add for additional setups that'll hurt next turn. Assuming you have these tamers out and certain cards in your hand and no blockers, it could also be just game. At 3 memory, you can digivolve the Metal Greymon Alteros mode into Metal Greymon X for 0, utilizing Cool Boy to draw 1 additional card and gain 1 memory. Now your Digimon gets +1 security check from Greymon, 1 from the Metal Greymon X, and 3000 DP as a buff, and +1 security check off Tai Kamiya. Not bad, right? Going into a BT1 Wargreymon, you now get an additional +1 security check off this Digimon and draw another card. But wait, you have 1 memory. Do you go into Wargreymon X or do something else? Playing a delicate plan might seem like a waste, right? Wrong. At 0 memory, you can place the X Antibody underneath Wargreymon and declare your attack. This Wargreymon has security check +4 and plus 5000 DP from your inheritables and tamer effects. Now trigger X Antibody's when attacking effect to digivolve into Wargreymon X for 1. All extra checks, DP buffs, and the ADB carry over, and you'll rip through everything at 17k DP. The only card that would make it a bad day is Chikurimon. At this point, Wargreymon X rips through 5 security, end of attack deletes a Digimon, and puts you at 4 memory. Then it's as simple as Omnimon for game. However, in the grand scheme of things, a blocker would have completely made this entire combo pointless. But if you did happen to have the EX1 Wargreymon instead, you could have delicate plan first, then digivolve into the EX1 Wargreymon, blitz and trigger the when attacking effect first to delete the blocker, before using X Antibody to digivolve into Wargreymon X. What are your thoughts on Wargreymon X and the explosive security destruction? As mentioned at the beginning of this video, I have a strong preference towards the Gaiamon variant, but I might look into testing a Rise Greymon variant as well. But in the meantime, let me know your thoughts on this variant below. This is Digi-Panda, logging out.